Anytime you beg another man to set you free, you'll never be free. Freedom is something that you have to do for yourself.
Okay, day 22 just ended. Justice Mellor gave his verdict. I'm sure you've probably heard it by now that he's ruled Craig Wright is not Satoshi Nakamoto. And I'll just do a quick summary of what happened throughout the day, and then I'll get into my thoughts about it. So they kind of opened up talking about when Craig's first patent application had been filed. It was something that he had inquired about yesterday and was expecting a follow-up to today. So they informed him that there was a patent that was started in 2011, that the patent process was started in 2011, but they had started working on it in 2010, and that it was a patent owned by Mr. Wilson initially, but that Craig's name was added to it after the fact, I believe the following year in 2012. Now, they talked about the discussion with Mike Hearn and the patents that were filed by Mike Hearn shortly after his conversations with Craig, outlining how Craig had been discussing things with him that he ended up filing patents for later. That was what Craig's lawyers were alleging. Then they gave a further description of how the Wayback Machine showed that that pad of paper existed earlier than COPA said it had, and that it did actually exist in 2009, not in 2012 as COPA had insisted. But then he pretty much ended his closing argument at that point and then started to go into relief. And there's a certain point here where in his relief statements, he was asking the judge for certain things in the event that Craig lost. And this is where I started to get a little worried, to be perfectly honest. It was during his relief when it was taking so long. I was expecting this to be a lickety-split thing, because in the rest of the trial, he really acted like really nonchalantly. And it was almost like Craig's team, there was instances where I said they either had supreme confidence in not objecting to certain things that were said. And in hindsight, it seems like it was the exact opposite. They knew they were going to lose. And it was quite obvious to me that they knew that they were going to lose, because they spent so much more time defending their relief requests and outlining what they wanted from relief. I think he actually spent more time almost doing his relief than doing his closing arguments. And that to me indicated that the lawyers were expecting a loss. And there's a lot of things in this case that really indicated they were expecting a loss. I mean, the emails between Calvin Ayre and Craig Wright, where he was explicitly pointing out to Craig that he didn't think Craig could win this case without signing. There's a lot to unpack there. The Christian Eger-Hansen thing didn't come up at all in their closing arguments, which to me indicates something really fishy. Like, that's a huge part of their case, to say that Christian Eger-Hansen was involved in like tainting all these documents and doing all these different things, which they alleged throughout the trial. They didn't mention that at all in their closing arguments. So that was very strange to me, because I took very detailed notes yesterday, and I knew that they didn't mention Calvin Ayre at all in their closing arguments, and they didn't. They chose not to in their they didn't mention it at all in their closing argument, which to me is just bizarre and again a little suspicious. Yeah, there's so much speculation going on in my mind that it's weird to me, but we'll see here. So when they were discussing the relief, he was saying that there were certain things that they wanted from the court. He was saying that if Craig is deemed not to be the author, that COPA wanted him to be an injunction placed against him so that he could not continue on saying that he was Satoshi. And Craig's team was arguing that this would be a restriction on his fundamental rights to self-expression, and that they're not a dictatorship country like North Korea or China, and that it would be inappropriate to put such a restriction on his fundamental freedom of expression in the event that he loses. It's also somewhat of an injustice for him not to be allowed to question the legal process. Those were pretty much the arguments that they were making. And when they started going really in depth into those arguments was where I was like, why are you spending so much time on this? They spent more time on that than defending key points to their case, which to me indicates that they knew the whole time that they were cooked, and that the things that they were doing that indicated supreme confidence was confidence probably in the fact that they were going to lose. So slightly misleading to us watching, because I mean, I felt just watching the trial that these guys were so confident, they weren't objecting very much, and all the other little things that were hinted at. I mean, Craig wore that Joker suit. I mean, now I almost wonder if he wore that suit not as a statement, but potentially maybe just to say, I'm the Joker. And that might be the case, but I'll reserve judgment. I think that there's definitely going to be a response from Craig's team, and I'd love to see what that is, because I mean, it's either going to go one of two ways. They'll try to appeal on some grounds, or they won't. And I think there's a good chance that they might not even appeal. I mean, Craig said so many times on the stand that he does not wish to be recognized as Satoshi. It's always an off chance that he's done this just so that it can be settled and he can move on with his life. He said that there's a big interruption in his life because of all of this, and that he just wants to hang out with his family and make his inventions. And I'm a family guy. I totally understand that. But it's like I said, I'm curious to see what the response from Craig's team will be. Now, I had actually just finished that video, but I had this extra thought that I wanted to add to it. And that's that Craig almost has to appeal. He absolutely has to appeal, because they're going to request jail for him. So if Craig doesn't win this on appeal, he's going to probably go to jail, do some jail time. And from that perspective, I really hope that he can move those Genesis coins. Otherwise, I mean, my take on this is that even if Craig lost this case, I still suspect he is Satoshi. He probably just doesn't have the means of proving it anymore, because he never really wanted to be recognized as Satoshi. And if you were someone who wanted to create this system and remain pseudonymous, you would probably destroy whatever evidence you had. So, I mean, if some of these documents are actually forgeries, it was probably his attempt to recreate them, and he might go to jail for it. Or it could be the case that he had the authentic documents, that they were corrupted, and Bitcoin is such a threat to the system that they want to throw this guy in jail and get rid of him. That's always a possibility. It's the more conspiratorial idea, but again, it's in the realm of possibilities, so I'll consider it. If it's possible, I'll consider any possibility, but I really hope that doesn't happen. Although I have many disagreements with Craig, I respect him as an inventor and just as a general brilliant guy who, I mean, I'm an Atlas Shrugged fan and I'm an Ayn Rand fan, so I have an admiration for people who invent. It's something I aspire to do personally, so hopefully he doesn't end up in jail, but it may very well happen, so we'll see. It was really strange to me that Craig wasn't present today. I kind of would have expected him to be there, just because, I mean, I was expecting there was a potential for a verdict, and the way the verdict was read, it was very unexpected. He was saying that there was going to be this long process, and he said the verdict will be ready when the verdict is ready. Or maybe he was saying that about the written statement. He was saying that there's going to be this long written statement, and I guess that's what he was saying, will be ready when it's ready. But it totally threw me off when he actually read the verdict, because he was saying this, the verdict will be ready when it's ready, and then he read it. And he stated that the evidence was overwhelming, that he believed the evidence was overwhelming, so he just gave the verdict and didn't give the long form explanation. I guess that is what will be ready when it's ready. But yeah, I mean, disappointing day for BSV people. I'm sure everyone was really excited. It looked from the outset like Craig's team had all this confidence because they weren't really arguing the case. Really, it looked like they were just going through the trial. And now it almost seems like they may have offered that settlement because they knew they were cooked. That's probably in hindsight what was happening. And I mean, generally, I think what's happened here, just my own 2 cents, my own take on what's happened, it could be the case that they maybe had a strong case, that some of their documents were corrupted by Kristen Egger Hansen or people infiltrating nChain to try to corrupt their evidence. But it could also just be the case that they never had enough real evidence to put forward to begin with. And I mean, I firmly believe that our Cummer lawsuit in Canada, when citizens of Canada tried to reinstate the Bank of Canada to our original to the Bank of Canada's original mandate, that this was a constitutionally valid court challenge that we had put forward in our courts, and it was 100% thrown out of the courts because our courts in Canada were corrupt. I don't think that's the case in this instance. I'll flat out defend every allegation against the Cummer lawsuit. That was a constitutionally valid lawsuit that was thrown out of court because the Canadian courts are corrupt. I'll state that until the day I die. This is probably just the case that Craig didn't have enough evidence to support his claim. Now, I originally said yesterday I thought there was about a 90% chance that Craig was going to win, and that was because I saw this enormous amount of confidence from Craig's team and not even objecting to things that if I was a lawyer, I would be objecting to. And I guess I just read into that exactly the wrong way, that it was a supreme confidence in that they knew the outcome, but that it wasn't going to go in their favor. And I mean, that was kind of revealed in the Calvin Ayre emails, where he was telling Craig that there's no way he can win this unless he signs. And I think that's definitely something that his team must have been prepared for because they were talking about it. So that leads me to the, again, baseless speculation, filling the room with hopium, that those 26.9 BTC that were sent to the Genesis block may be some sort of insurance policy that Craig set out in case he loses. I mean, someone from Binance knows which account sent those. It was from a Binance account those coins were sent to the Genesis block, yet there's been no leak. Someone at Binance knows who did that. Nobody's mentioned it. Nobody's been like, oh wow, I'm such an idiot. Nobody wrote like some article about how they're the idiot that accidentally burned 27 Bitcoin by sending it to the Genesis block. That's a real unknown. And again, the only person who could do that without it being a big, gigantic error that no one would make by accident. No one's accidentally sending 26.9 BTC to an address they can't recover the funds from. I'll put a small percentage of hope in the idea that Craig did that as an insurance policy in the event that he lost, and that he may be moving those coins soon to prove that he does actually possess a way to move those coins, because I know there's a lot of speculation. I think someone even said that during the trial that he said that those coins couldn't be moved. I didn't pick that up when I was watching it. It may have been an instance where perhaps my stream was cutting out, but I don't recall hearing that. I don't recall hearing that from Craig. So I guess that's something that remains to be seen. Those coins might move, but really I'm not particularly optimistic in anything happening to change the verdict at this point. I think this is probably going to be the verdict. There's a very small chance that something like that could happen, but I wouldn't put a lot of hope in it. This is probably the verdict that's going to stand. I don't think it'll be changed. And I am pretty confident in that because Craig's team knew that they were going to lose, and the way that they behaved this whole trial was evidence of that, and I just misread it completely. Yeah, I mean, we misread the settlement offer that was given out. Now, I mean, something might change. He might appeal, he might win on appeal, something could always happen. But again, I'm pretty confident that this is going to be the verdict going forward, that there isn't going to be some massive change to things, and that things will pretty much continue on as they always have. The status quo isn't going to change, and the crypto market will continue to operate like one giant Ponzi casino. And that's going to be the case until patent litigation moves forward anyway. So there isn't going to be an imminent change, but we're probably going to see a lot of patent litigation in the future. Craig said on the stand that if he lost this case, that would be his avenue forward. So I think that's what we'll see. I don't even necessarily think he's going to appeal this. Maybe if there's some case, or if I think the only instance we'll see Craig appeal this is if there is some mechanism for which he can move those coins from the Genesis block and then use that to back up his case, because I think there was nothing to his case and his team knew it, and that they won't appeal because they didn't even feel the case was worth fighting throughout the case. The only thing that I could offer anyone who's really looking for some hopium is that maybe they knew that they were going to be cooked, that their evidence was insufficient to win the case, and perhaps they want to move those coins as a demonstration to prove that he can do something that only Satoshi could do and move coins off of that Genesis block. But I'm mostly discounting that. I don't think that's going to happen. I'll put it forward in the realm of possibilities because it exists in the realm of possibilities. It's not an impossibility as far as I know. It could be, but I'm not certain of that. So I'll leave the window open. Yeah, probably the next video I think I'll make will be about maybe logic and Robert Anton Wilson. He's an author who I really respect and admire, but a lot of his thinking as it pertains to these sort of issues is really relevant, and I mean, that'll be really obvious in the video that I make next. So yeah, I'm disappointed, but not surprised. And yeah, I don't think the courts did a bad job. I think Justice Mellor just simply didn't have enough evidence from Craig's team to rule in his favor, and that's why he said the evidence was overwhelming. So yeah, disappointed, but not particularly surprised. I really want to see if Craig moves to appeal or not. I think that if he does move to appeal, that he's got some sort of ace up his sleeve, because I mean, they didn't even fight this case. They didn't. So if he moves to appeal, then I would increase the likelihood that he might have a mechanism of moving those coins from the Genesis block. Otherwise, I think this is the verdict, and that's the way it's going to stay. But yeah, there's lots of different things that I'll be discussing. Lots of interesting stuff in the blockchain space that I'll want to talk about. There are a lot of really good projects for empowering people and freeing people. Really, I'm not someone who looks to get rich into crypto. I just want to use technology to better my life and to give myself a higher degree of freedom. Take back some power personally for myself that is usurped from us by governments and large institutions. And really the whole point of this channel is to focus on those things. So that's what I'll be doing from here on out. But I will definitely be covering everything that arises as a result of this trial, any pending appeals or any relevant news to the trial. I'll update it and I'll put it on this channel. If there's something if you want me to cover, send me a message and I'll do my best. Yeah, we'll see going forward what happens. If you're a BSV bag holder, don't sell your bags. We got Terranode. There's a lot of things that'll happen. I was hedging quite a bit that Craig would win. I'm expecting the market is going to dump, but I want to buy back in a bigger bag of BSV and see what happens in the future. I mean, Terranode the technology is still fantastic. It doesn't rely on Craig. Craig's name being attached to it might hurt some of the marketing for it, but it's superior tech. 7 transactions per second is still a joke on BTC. BTC is still a fraud of a Bitcoin, even if Craig isn't Satoshi. That's how I think. But I don't know. I don't know what to expect at this point, other than Craig is either going to appeal and he's got an ace up his sleeve, or he's not going to appeal and he's going to pursue a lot of patent litigation. So time will tell. That's my take on it.